On March 2005, the government of Shimane Prefecture of Japan passed a controversial bill. The Shimane government announced its decision to create Takeshima Day. The Japanese call Dokdo Takeshima.
立場が違っておりまして、日本から見れば不法占拠ということになると思います。
일본이 끝내 우리 독도 인근 해역 탐사를 강행하려 하고 있습니다.
Japan continues to provoke Korea on the issue of Dokdo. Recently, in addition to the Shimane Prefecture government's pamphlets and posters, the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan referred to Dokdo as Takeshima and claimed that Korea is illegally occupying Dokdo according to international law, as the island is Japan's territory. Japan claims Dokdo as its territory and continues to provoke Korea over the island, which has been Korea's sole territory. Dokdo finally becomes unsilenced. What is the truth? Located at a distance of 87.4 kilometers southeast of Ulung Island, Dokdo is the easternmost island of Korea. As a Korean territory, Dokdo is comprised of 89 small rock islets in addition to Dongdo, East Island, and Seodo, West Island. About 2.5 million years ago, Dokdo rose from the sea due to volcanic activity. Dokdo is a wintering ground for birds such as petrels and black-tailed gulls and resting area for migrant birds. The island is protected as a nature reserve under the designation Natural Monument No. 336 of Korea in 1982. Located at the intersection of warm and cold ocean currents, Dokdo is a golden reservoir full of plankton and fish. Since time immemorial, the livelihoods of Korean fishermen have depended upon the waters of Dokdo. As there are numerous birds on the island, Dokdo is called the hometown of the birds. In the past 2 years, Dokdo has attracted about 163,000 visitors. Many Koreans travel to Dokdo wishing to set foot in Korea's easternmost islands, a protected nature reserve. When did Koreans first recognize Dokdo and Ulung Island as Korean territories? According to the Samguk Sagi, the tiny kingdom of Usanguk became a part of Shilla in 512. In another history text called the Sejongshillok Jiriji, a reference to two islands, Usando and Murungdo, appears. It was said that on a clear day, Dokdo was visible from Ulungdo, indicating that they were in close proximity to each other. During the Shilla dynasty, the islands were called Usanguk Kingdom. However, Japan denies that Korea possessed knowledge of Dokdo's existence because the name Dokdo does not match Usanguk.
17세기 일본에서 작성된 안용복 관련 조사보고서가 있습니다. 그 조사보고서에 보면 울릉도와 독도가 강원도 소속으로 명백히 표기되어 있습니다. 그리고 1808년 정부 관창 문서인 만기요람에 보면 우산도가 일본인들이 말하는 송도다라고 해서 우산도가 독도라는 것을 명백하게 기록하고 있습니다.
Many maps and texts, such as the Dongguk Yeoji Seungnam and Shinjung Dongguk Yeoji Seungnam, Mangi Yoram, and Paldo Cheongdo, inform that Dokdo and Ulungdo have been Korean territories throughout a long period of history. What is the basis of Japan's claim over Dokdo? The first is that Japan recognized Dokdo as Japanese territory since 1618.
竹島固有が日本の固有領土という理由の第一は1617世紀初めて言った方がいいですね。鳥取県米子の町人2人が幕府の特別の許可を得て竹島に行くようになった。だけど考えてみれば朝鮮政府は空洞政策、島に人が住まないように空っぽにしたんですね。だから領有権を放棄したわけじゃないんで、ね。でこのことはちょうど空き家があると言ってそこにずかずか無断で入って宝物を取って帰る泥棒と一緒なんですね。だから私は泥棒の論理だと。
From 1618, a permit of sea passage was issued by Japan as a fishing license to cross to foreign land. While Japan presents the permit as evidence of ownership of Dokdo, it actually verifies that Dokdo was Korean territory. In 1693, 40 Joseon fishermen including An Yong-bok engaged in a clash with Japanese fishing ships near the waters of Ulleungdo and Dokdo. This was the first time that territorial claims over Ulleungdo and Dokdo arose between Korea and Japan. The Tokugawa Bakufu recognized that the two islands were Joseon territories in 1696 and banned Japanese fishermen from crossing Ulleungdo and Dokdo. Onsu Shicho Goki is the oldest Japanese text that records the existence of Dokdo. It reveals that the northernmost border of Japan is the Oki Islands. Such evidence confirms that Ulleungdo and Dokdo are not Japanese territories. It is also written likewise in the Samguk Jeobyang map in the Samguk Tongnam Dongsol, written by Hayashi Shihei, who was the most renowned geographer of Japan. In 1785, not only are Ulleungdo and Dokdo painted in the same color as mainland Korea, but a footnote states that the islands are Korean territories. Another official Japanese government document decisively supports Korea's sovereignty claims over Dokdo. In 1876, while preparing maps of modern Japan and land registration, Japan's Ministry of Home Affairs concluded that Ulleungdo and Dokdo were Korean territories unrelated to Japan. Their conclusions were submitted to Tajokan, the highest state council in Japan, for final confirmation. On March 20, 1877, the Tajokan issued a final edict that Ulleung Island and nearby island, Dokdo, were Korean territories that had nothing to do with Japan. Tajokan attached the Kijukdo Yakdo as an appendix map to the edict, which definitively proved that Dokdo and Ulleungdo were not Japanese territories. Japan's second argument is that Dokdo became its territory by the Japanese cabinet's decision to incorporate and effectively manage Dokdo in 1905, and that it is legal according to international law. Japan points to the existence of Shimane Prefectural Notice No. 40 that dated February 22, 1905. It declares that Dokdo is under the jurisdiction of Shimane Prefecture. Japan embarked on the Russo-Japanese War in February 1904 and decided to build naval watchtowers in Ulleungdo and Dokdo to monitor the activities of Russian fleets passing by the waters. A Japanese fisherman, Nakai Yosaburo, submitted a request to lease Dokdo to monopolize the catch of sea lions. Afterwards, he submitted a petition for territorial incorporation of Dokdo, which was approved by the Japanese government through the acceptance of a petition by a fisherman.
원래 편입이라고 하는 것은 무주지, 즉 주인이 없는 땅에 대해서만 할 수가 있습니다. 그런데 독도가 우리나라의 땅이라고 하는 것은 이미 1696년에 안영복의 활동에 의해서 일본 국가막부 정부에서 우리나라의 땅이라는 것을 인정을 했습니다. 그리고 1900년에는 고종황제의 칙령 41호에 의해서 울도 군수가 관할을 하도록 했습니다. 이처럼 명백한 우리나라의 땅을 일본의 시마네 해안에서 편입을 했다고 하는 것은 국제법상으로 명백한 불법이라고 할 수 있겠습니다.
Joseon, Korea had already passed Imperial Ordinance No. 41 in 1900, which independently placed Ulleungdo under the jurisdiction of Ulchin County, Gangwon Province. Subsequently, Ulleung Island was elevated to the status of a county, Uldo. A governor was also appointed for Uldo County, which included Ulleungdo and Dokdo, at the time widely known as Seokdo. The Joseon government announced this fact in the Central Official Gazette and circulated it to foreign embassies. Despite such facts, the Japanese sought advantage at the outset of the Russo-Japanese War to place Dokdo secretly under the jurisdiction of Shimane Prefecture. Against this backdrop, Japan asserts that it has effectively controlled Dokdo.
그 당시는 러일 전쟁이 한창이었던 시기였고 을사늑약이 강제된 해였습니다. 일본의 지배권이 독도뿐만 아니라 한반도 전역에 미치고 있었습니다. 그래서 1905년 이후로 일본이 독도를 실효적으로 지배했다라고 하는 것은 식민 지배를 근거로 독도에 대한 영유권을 주장하고 있는 것이라 할 수 있습니다.
Soon after Japan won the Russo-Japanese War on September 5, 1905, the Korea-Japan Prefectorate Treaty was signed in November to deprive Korea of diplomatic rights. In January 1906, Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry was abolished and Japan assumed control over Korea's domestic affairs. Though Japan annexed Korea as a colony in 1910, Dokdo was taken by the Japanese in 1905. When Korea regained its independence, Dokdo was expected to have been returned to Korea. The Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers issued Skapin No. 667 and ordered the return of Jeju Island, Ulleungdo, Dokdo to Korea. This order reinforced the principles of Cairo Declaration, where the Allied Powers agreed that Japan must return all territories previously taken by violence and under duress. Japan's third argument is that Dokdo remained as a Japanese territory in the San Francisco Peace Treaty signed after World War II. In the aftermath of World War II, the Allied powers signed a treaty of peace with Japan in September 1951 to set the terms and obligations for the war-defeated nations. In Article 2 of the treaty, it stated that Japan must renounce its claim over Korea and recognize Korea's independence. Although the article specifically stipulated that Japan renounces all rights, titles, and claims to Jeju, Gyeonggi-do, and Ulleungdo, Dokdo was unfortunately omitted. Based on the omission, Japan argues that the Allied powers recognized that Dokdo was a Japanese territory. What happened? Japan lobbied strenuously to include Dokdo as Japanese territory. This resulted in the exclusion of Dokdo as a Korean territory in the final version of the San Francisco Peace Treaty, although it was initially included in the early drafts.
최초 초안에는 한국 땅으로 되어 있었던 것이 일본 사람들의 로비에 의해서 일본 땅으로 변경이 되었다가 누락이 된 것이기 때문에 미국이 어떠한 일본이나 한국의 편을 들기가 어렵다라는 측면에서 삭제된 것으로 보아야지 이것을 일본 땅이다라고 해서 삭제된 것이다라고는 해석할 수가 없습니다.
The San Francisco Peace Treaty clearly states that Japan acted unlawfully when it colonized neighboring countries. The peace treaty also details Japan's obligation for its role in the war. Japan's use of the peace treaty to bolster its claim over Dokdo is reprehensible, as the island was taken by force in the process of colonization. Japan's claim of sovereignty over Dokdo is not a simple territorial issue, rather it is a historical one. Along with Ulleungdo, Dokdo was claimed by Silla in 512. Since then, there has never been a time when Dokdo did not belong to Korea. Dokdo has been Korea's land, which has never once been abandoned. Japan's territorial claim over Dokdo is more than a simple territorial issue. It's a denial of Korea's complete restoration of sovereignty. Dokdo was the first Korean territory that Japan annexed in the process of the Peninsula invasion in 1905. Dokdo was the historical land that was reclaimed following the collapse of Japanese imperialism in 1945.